So you've probably watched the other videos where I talk about what it's been like touring around with the van for a thick end of a month in Europe. And if you haven't watched them, then I'll well, have a look on the channel. And in this video, we just sort of sum it up to say what we like and didn't like about the van and what we thought of the different roads and road users in Europe. So stay tuned and see you in a minute. Well, hello and welcome to another edition of our Wolfie's Wheels. You might see this microphone today, which indicates a slightly different format because we will actually be talking to Mrs. Wolfie as well to share our views and experience of our recent trip. You may well have already watched some of the previous videos in which we go into a bit more detail on what it's been like. But just to recap, we've been on a tour of Europe and we've gone down through France, across to Luxembourg, down through Germany to the Czech Republic, where we stayed at Prague and then stayed at Brno. We went then down into Hungary, through Slovakia, into Hungary, where we stayed at Budapest, and then down at a place called Badajoz, spelled Badasconi, pronounced Badaschoy, on Lake Balaton. And from there we went across to Vienna. And then from Vienna, we went back up into Germany, over to Strasbourg, up to Reims, however it's pronounced. You ask 10 Frenchmen and you get 11 different pronunciations, so who knows. And then we're now sort of holed up at Folkestone, sort of summing up and thinking about where we've just been. And on this tour, we've done 2,700 and something miles, averaging 34.7 mpg. And we drove for 72 hours driving time. And the whole tour that we've been on has been with another 10 couples, including Bob and Wendy Reeves, who run an organisation called Crossings Motorhome Tours. And they were the people who sort of put the whole thing together. And I'm going to do a separate video on whether or not tours are a good thing to go on or not. We'd all have our own different views of that. I've got mine. And I'm going to tell you what I think about that later on. But anyway, in this film, we're just going to look at what it's been like to live in a 2021 Autosleper Kingham for basically a month and do 2,700 miles. What did we like about the van? What didn't we like about the van? What we thought of the various road structures in the countries I've mentioned. And what we thought of the driving standards in those various countries, which is why we're going to talk to Mrs. Wolfie as well, because obviously there's two of us. We've both been driving, we've both been in the van, and it's not just fair perhaps to have a single perspective. So without further ado, we'll move on to that. And I think the first thing we'll talk about are things that we found with the different roads and road users in the different countries. So our first experience of foreign travel was down through France and into Luxembourg. And from a personal perspective, I mean, I find northern France fairly dull to drive through. I don't know what you thought.
Yep, it's pretty dull.
So, you know, getting down to Reims, however you want to pronounce it, was a bit of a functional job. We actually didn't go down at the toll roads. We went on a non-toll way, and I think the surfaces were fine, weren't they?
Yeah, they were fine.
You know, driving standards were fine, just not a problem. Very much quieter than the UK.
Definitely.
We stayed there for one night, and then we went into Luxembourg, and again, Luxembourg was a bit busier, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
driving in Luxembourg, but again, you know, road surfaces. Driving standards and things were just a non-issue. Yeah. And from there we went actually along the side of the Moselle into Germany, up towards a place called Rudesheim. So we went up the side of the Moselle and then basically down the Rhine. And the road surfaces were mixed, I think.
Yeah, they were mixed. They were mixed. Yeah.
I mean, we do talk about potholes and things like that in the UK, and we assume that everybody else's roads are a whole lot better. And I think, to be honest, in our experience, they're not really, are they?
Not really. I think they were slightly better. I think they're slightly better than our roads.
In Germany.
In Germany.
Yeah. And the standard of driving was fine.
The standard of driving, I think, is better than the UK. They're very, if you go into a town and it's a 30-kilometre or a 50-kilometre limit, they stick to that.
Yeah, they certainly do there. And certainly the further south you got in Germany towards the Czech Republic, they very much do that.
Yeah.
And we'll come on to that when we get to the Czech Republic. But certainly the standard of driving's on motorways. For example, I mean, we went on a couple of non-toll autobahns, and okay, they drive very fast because, frankly, they're allowed to.
Yeah.
But they overtake and then they pull in again.
Yeah.
None of this. Oh, there's a lorry 2 miles ahead. I better pull out and overtake that.
Efficient. They're efficient.
They're efficient. Yeah, efficient. And yeah, absolutely great. And as we moved down into the Czech Republic, I think the roads became probably a bit worse and more like the UK roads. The traffic, of course, was fairly light in Germany.
It's not
nowhere near as busy as the UK was.
No.
But certainly, again, in the Czech Republic, we stayed off the toll roads because this van, if you've watched previous videos, you'll know it's actually been up-plated to 4.5 ton capacity. And that means you'd have to get sort of special boxes and all sorts of things, which is a right kerfuffle if you wanted to use the toll roads. So the easiest thing was, well, let's not use the toll roads. And there's a good reason for that, and that is simply because we wanted to see more of the country. And generally speaking, when you're on the motorway networks anywhere, you could be anywhere.
You could be anywhere. It's a bit boring, a bit dull.
Yeah. But coming back to what Anne, aka Mrs. Wolfie, said earlier about the speed limit, people adhering to the speed limits, I think certainly in the Czech Republic, every time you got to a village, and villages tend to be 50 kilometres, which is 30 miles an hour, and some of them were even 30 kilometres an hour, which is 20 miles an hour, and some were a mixture of both. Everybody, and I mean everybody, without exception, slows down to that speed limit, which is very different to the UK, because if you are driving on a similar road, which would sort of be one of our A or B roads, and you come to a village and you start doing 30 miles an hour through that village, in the UK you get someone right up your chuff, edging you along or whatever. But it's almost as if in those parts of Europe they sort of accept, well, this could be my village. I don't like people speeding through my village, and I'm not going to do it through yours, which is, a much more sensible approach. Yeah. And it just was not an issue. The Czechoslovakian or Czech Republic driving standards, I think, were pretty good on the whole.
Yeah.
But certainly, as we moved into Slovakia, things did take a definite downturn, I think, in the driving standards. And finding cars on your side of the road overtaking.
Yeah.
It was
squeaky.
Yeah,
squeaky.
And not that uncommon. It was like, I don't know whether they're a particularly religious society there, and they just kind of pray to the God in which they believe, put their foot down, shut their eyes and overtake. I really don't know, but we had more than one hairy moment go through Slovakia where we're just on our side of the road, quite happily trolling along, and then all of a sudden a car decides to pull out, coming the other way. But again, you get used to these things and you just drive accordingly. And again, we didn't go on the toll roads. So after we left Slovakia, we went through into Hungary and managed to hit Budapest at 5 p.m. on a Friday, crossing Budapest in a motorhome. You've never been there before. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, I think. But again, I think in many ways it's like traversing any big city. Nobody's going anywhere fast. Everybody understands. Nobody really knows where they're going. So if you're in the wrong lane, you sort of indicate and people will let you in, and you let other people in, and you kind of rub along quite nicely. But it was a bit, just a bit
busy.
It was busy. That's probably a good description. I was going to say a bit squeaky, but yeah, it was fine. We got there. And again, the roads in Hungary were probably very much like the UK, a bit more like Polish roads. Now, we've been to did a tour actually with Crossings in 2019,
2019.
the previous motorhome through Poland. And what you found there was the roads were not particularly potholed, but the potholes tend to get repaired, so you end up with like a tarmac lump, so they're sort of lumpy. Whereas the UK, you get potholes with harsh edges. You don't seem to get them in Hungary or indeed Poland. They're the more lumpy and bumpy. So they're very uneven, but actually not necessarily tyre damaging. Although it was quite interesting to see both in Hungary and in Slovakia and indeed the Czech Republic, there were quite a large number of independent tyre repair and dealers, far more than you get, I think, in the UK.
Yeah.
You know, sort of probably about every 20 or 30 kilometres you would have a tyre place, an independent tyre place, which was kind of, I think, a bit telling for the sort of roads and indeed the sort of roads that they drive on, because bear in mind we were on the more major roads and they were like this, so I think the side roads would be, well, practically unmetalled. I mean, the sat nav on one occasion driving when we went from Hungary back into Austria, went through some beautiful scenery, and the sat nav says take the next right. Well, I looked at this next right and it was more like a, well,
Dirt track.
I'm going to say a farm track would be over egging it. It was actually a marked road on the map. It's a proper road. I didn't fancy it, so I just stuck on the road we were on. But yeah, so anyway, that was Hungary.
Yes.
And from there we went into Austria.
Austria, yeah.
And again, we avoided the toll roads because in Austria, again, you need a box and blah, 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 load of kerfuffle. I did try and get a box just in case I ended up on the toll road, but I gave up. Quite honestly, I tried to do it online. I couldn't do it online. I did manage to get the Austrian authorities to accept that this was a Euro 6 van and what the rate would be. And then when I applied to get a box, it said, what number is your box? Well, I don't know. I haven't got a box. Anyway, I gave up and just decided we weren't going to go on the toll roads after all, which was always the plan.
Yeah.
Quite honestly. So we didn't do that. And what did we think of Austria? German drivers and things and
similar to
roads?
Germany, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Good standard of driving. Road surfaces were not dissimilar to the UK.
No, sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're not as good, but
yeah. And that, I think, then just took us back into Germany, blah, 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 France, which we've talked about before.
Yeah.
So probably the next thing to talk about is what we did and didn't like about the van, from both a driving vehicle and a camping, living in it perspective.
Yes.
So I suppose first thing to think about is what was it like to drive this 2021 Autosleper Kingham panel van conversion for sort of 2,700 miles in effectively about a month. What was it like to drive? So I know what I'm going to say, so let's ask Mrs. Wolfie what she thought of it from a driving angle.
Easy. Straightforward, better than we've had a larger motorhome before. It was easy on the roads because it's a slightly smaller van. It did what you wanted it to do. We didn't get in a situation where we came under a bridge that was too low or anywhere where we were too wide. It's a good size. It's an easy to drive van. No aching, no issues with being tired after we'd, no sore back or anything like that. Straightforward, easy, comfortable. What's not to like?
Yeah, I think I'd pretty much echo that. And this is quite an interesting point, maybe. If you are thinking about going on the continent and your van is a right-hand drive van and are concerned, I really wouldn't be. I mean, this is a right-hand drive van and it was absolutely fine. The mirrors are great. So that wasn't a problem.
No, it wasn't a problem.
As you just said, it's reasonably quiet on the road. You can easily do 60, 70, even where permitted. We did go up to 80 a couple of times, but really we generally cruised sort of around about 60 miles an hour on the motorways or whatever the speed limit was on a lower road. And it was fine. It's a manual van. That was not an issue. It was fine. Almost 35 miles to the gallon. In fact, up until today, which was when we come from Reims, Rems, however it's pronounced, up to Dover, which is the first time we used toll roads, and the fuel consumption average up to that point was 35 to the gallon. It dropped to 34.7 on a reasonably rapid, by comparison, run up the péage for 230 odd kilometres?
Something like that.
About 180 miles.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, yeah, I mean, as a van, it's great. And I'll be quite honest with you, I think I preferred... We've had... 2 Heimer A-class motorhomes before that, as you can see in the pictures that I'm just sort of putting up about here. And they were both, we went abroad in both of those. One of them we went sort of to France and Italy in, and the other one we went around Poland in. Yeah, we only did Poland in that second one, didn't we? Yeah, as in abroad. And they were physically a much bigger van than this. And you noticed it on the roads.
Yeah.
And also the... blind spots were much more significant in those vans, because this one, as you can see from this little bit of film here, looking over your shoulder, you can see all round. The visibility in this van is very, very good, and that made a big difference, I think. In terms of anything going wrong, well, you know, we came through some torrential rain in Germany. And in fact, you know, to the extent that the flood warnings were out on, was it the Rhine or the Danube, or was it both? I can't remember.
Certainly the Danube, might be the Rhine. It was affecting France and southern Germany and Italy. Yeah,
so very significant. And we did have a sensor come on that said the coolant level wasn't right. But we know that was a sensor issue. I think it just got very wet from driving rain. But other than that, it's you know, it's been a great van.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean... Okay, and so it should be. It's a 2021 van with 13,000 miles on it now. Of course, it should be all right, but you never know, do you? So I think, you know, big tick for the van. Very much like driving it. It's been great, but you know, it's a lot. It's not that big. So, is it any good for camping? Well, we'll talk about that next. So, what's the van like for camping in part 2?
You're not going to see part 1. He's not going to do it.
No, I'm not going to.
He's not going to do it. There'll be no outtakes. The van is really easy for camping in.
Yeah, we just had too many mistakes in the previous bits. So it's fine. And it's amateurs. You can't get the staff. Anyway, so you liked it, did you?
I liked it. Yes. There's plenty of room to say it's only a small panel van, smallish.
It's 6.36 metres long.
Yeah. We have a bed, which you will have seen, or you will see, which is set up all the time. So there's no messing about with having to make up your bed every night. It's easy to set up on site when we get there.
As indeed you will see, because there's the video which shows you how quick it is to set up. 7 and a bit minutes, including filming time. Yeah. Or if you're going for the full setup, probably all in 20 minutes. Yeah. But so it's dead easy to set up. We do have quite a lot of room for clothing and such like. Yeah. It would be nice if we had a slightly bigger garage, but we've been spoilt with previous motorhomes. We've pretty much brought everything with us that we wanted to bring. So I can't think of anything I didn't bring that I wanted to bring. No. So you can't complain. It's all fitted in. We have where we put things. No complaints from my point of view. No. I mean, there's been more specific films. More specific films about camping in the van earlier in the series of the tour. So this is really just a sum up, and it's fine. And if you want to know a bit more about what the van is like, there are reviews of the van on the channel anyway, so you can always have a look at those, and you'll see the layout where we talk about the bed that you said is always made up, and the chairs and all the rest of it. So there's far more detailed, and this isn't a detailed review. It's really what's it been like. It's been like for a month. For a month, and it's been fabulous. Yep. Have I missed a slightly bigger van that we had? Well, no, because I think actually the layout on this gives us a good amount of internal space. Yes, it does. Yeah. Probably the only thing, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't enjoy cooking in the van, but I didn't enjoy cooking in the other vans either. So it doesn't mean you can't muscle up a decent meal. It's just that I'm not used to not having as much work surface as we've got at Wolfie Towers. But yeah, it's been a great van for camping in, and not once have I wished that we'd had a bigger van.
No.
And in fact, more than that, I'm really pleased that the van is as size it is, because it's made it so easy to drive on the different roads, etc., etc. Yeah, so a big tick from the van side for being a van, and a big tick for the conversion side, for the layout and how everything's worked,
and a big tick that we picked the right one for us.
And yeah, absolutely, they're definitely the right van for us. I'm just going to jump in here because I thought of a couple of things which we haven't mentioned that we did and did not like about the van. One of the things particularly that we both found was very effective are the windows on the side here. These ones, which from the outside, as you can see from this little bit of film here, are very dark, and they're called a thermic windows. They're only single glazed. During the course of this trip, it's been very hot. It's been up to 28, probably almost 30 degrees at times, and they've been remarkably efficient at keeping the van cool. At the back of the van, in the bed area, there are actually no opening windows. You've only got the roof vent, and I was a bit concerned that using the van in warmer climes might make it a bit stuffy at night, and actually it worked really well with the blinds shut and the roof lights shut and the silver screens on. So yeah, big tick for the windows on the side. So that was something we did like. However, on the negative point, one of the things I think that has been and will always be a continual source of annoyance when using this van is the lack of water capacity. A 60 litre tank for the fresh water and a 45 litre for the waste simply isn't big enough. You do have to continually, every time you move on site, every couple of 3 days, seem to be forever refilling the tank, and you sort of have to do a bit of guesstimate work on it anyway, because as I've mentioned in previous videos, on which you may have already watched, and if you haven't, please feel free to look them up, the gauges are an entire work of fiction, so you can't really just rely on the gauges, and yeah, I am a bit disappointed that the water facilities on the van are perhaps not as good as they could be. But on a positive note with the water facilities is to do with the Whale hot water system. That really is efficient. I mean, we've been staying on some sites with some fairly low powered electric amperage, but enough to run it on electric on the very first setting, which is basically 1 kilowatt, and hot water warms up really quite quickly there, and it gets so hot you cannot put your hand under the tap. It really is very, very hot, and plenty to do washing up and washing of selves with. Neither of us have showered in the van this trip, so I don't know if there's actually enough water in the hot water system to have a decent shower. But yeah, the hot water is a very, very good system in the van. As you'll know from previous videos, if you've watched them, and if you haven't, obviously, as I say earlier, you can look them up. I'm less impressed with the heating in the van, which has been problematic from time to time and is generally not over efficient, but that's not part of this video, because this is what it was like for a month in the late spring, early summer, and so the heating hasn't really been on. So there you go, folks. That's your summary of what we thought of European roads, European driving, doing 2,700 miles in a month in the van, what it's like as a van, what it's like for camping. And I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you've got this far, thank you so much for watching. And as usual, feel free to share it, tell your mates about it, give it a thumbs up. That's always good. Comment. If you want to subscribe, great. It'd be nice if you did. But other than that, I'm just going to wrap this one up right here, right now. And I'll see you in a future edition of Our Wolfie's Wheels. Bye.